All right, another come follow me. This is so cool. So this is getting into the official declarations and the articles of faith. So some really cool things to talk about today. I'm super excited about this. So we're done with the official doctrine and covenants, and this is kind of the addendums to it. The articles of faith is actually part of the Pearl of Great Price, but they're bringing them up in this week for us to discuss. So let's start with the articles of faith. These are absolutely revelation. I cannot say that enough. I really, really, really believe strongly, 100%, that the articles of faith are revelation. Okay, so a little bit of the backstory in the articles of faith. There was a reporter that wanted to give some information to understand more about the saints. He wrote a letter to Joseph Smith and to say, hey, could you summarize your main beliefs of your church and put it together? And he put it together in response to that, called the Wentworth letter. It's a much bigger letter, but in there he lines out these 13 articles of faith, and we have since adopted them as official doctrine in the church and put them to use. Hopefully you memorize these. If you have not memorized the articles of faith, you are missing a great opportunity. I absolutely recommend you memorize the articles of faith. How I was taught to memorize them is mentioned. We actually have a whole video series on the articles of faith where we spend a video on each article of faith, okay, plus the introduction one. So we have a whole playlist on that. Please go watch those. There's a lot of fun things to learn about them. I absolutely believe that there is no coincidence in the order that the articles of faith were given. They match some concepts and ideas of belief that is really important in counseling type work, and the articles of faith follow those patterns. It's so amazing. And there's 3 sections. The articles of faith can be broken into 4 sections, really. There's the foundational concepts of the church, the organizational concepts of the church, the goal of all of it coming together, and then how do we relate with the world around us. So watch those videos, go through the introduction one and all of them, and you'll see some really profound stuff. I think at the time of this in December of 2021, we have released so far, I believe, up to Article of Faith 9. So the next ones are coming out. I think March is number 13. So January, February, March, we have the next 3 coming out. So please subscribe and follow us in that playlist as well to get all those articles of faith. But go back and watch them. There's a lot of great stuff. Love the articles of faith. There's so much there. We're not going to take time to get into it in this video. Because we want to spend some time also on the official declarations that come up in here as well. So there's 2 more things that come up in official declarations. And I think this is an important point to bring up of a little bit of what's going on here, okay? So Joseph F. Smith's revelation was section 138, and that was around, I think, 1910 or 1912 that was given. And then, of course, later, there was a need for more revelation. And these show that we have continuing revelation in the church. Not every revelation that the prophet gives is written down and made official doctrine of the church. But we see a little bit of a difference here because they made this revelation and the next one not necessarily sections in the Doctrine and Covenants, but made them official declarations. So they're kind of the addendum to the Doctrine and Covenants. So still revelations, really just the same as what Joseph and Brigham and them got in that we have in the Doctrine and Covenants, but the church has treated them officially a little different, but calling them declarations rather than sections in the Doctrine and Covenants. I'm not 100% sure why that changed, but we've still even had that change today. When you think about the proclamation to the family, the proclamation on the priesthood, and those things, we're getting these official proclamations that are coming out, but they're not necessarily wrapping them into other parts of the Doctrine and Covenants. And honestly, they probably should be in the Doctrine and Covenants. And maybe they will put those in and re-release the Doctrine and Covenants with those in as extra declarations, or maybe they'll put them all as sections in the end or something. We don't know. But they're all revelations. They're not different. They're just brought forward to us in a different way. But they are all revelations. So official declaration 1, this is the one around polygamy. This is the declaration that was given to Wilford Woodruff, I about said Woodrow Wilson. I sometimes mix those two up. But it talks about basically, this is the letter. This is the letter basically that he wrote, President Woodruff wrote, in dealing with what was going on with the whole polygamy thing. Okay, the church had been persecuted. There had been lots of challenges to things. Women who had been given the right to vote through the U.S. Constitution and amendments and things, their right to vote was taken away with the amendment. Which act was it? Dang it, I forgot the name of the act. It's in the Saints, Volume 2, and it talks about it. But it was the act that basically said, you can't practice polygamy. When that act went in, that basically took the voting rights away from all women who were involved in polygamous relationships and things. Lots of challenges. A lot of apostles and people were hiding, and the men who were called to live the polygamy, they were hiding from authorities. They were running. It was crazy. The church was, they're threatening to take a temple and church property away from the church and everything else. So there's a lot of pressure on them from the government, and they stood by it as best as they could. But this is the letter that President Woodrow wrote. This is actually a commentary with Lorenzo Snow in here as well about that, and the manifesto talking about the official end of polygamy, basically. And so this is what the official declaration was about, is ending the revelation that ended the practice of polygamy. So really interesting stuff in there. It's well worth reading. If you want to understand better the situation of polygamy with the church, well worth reading. Official Declaration number 1. So that's really what that one comes down to. In fact, this was in chapter 41 of book 2 of the Saints. Was a really interesting quote that came up in here. And this was President Woodruff, that said this. And this is kind of a little bit of a context for what was going on with this official declaration and this manifesto. So President Wilford Woodruff said this. He says, "If we did not stop this practice, all ordinances would be stopped throughout the land of Zion. Confusion would reign throughout Israel, and many men would be made prisoners. This trouble would have come upon the whole church, and we should have been compelled to stop the practice. But I want to say this. I should have let all the temples go out of our hands. I should have gone to prison myself and let every other man go there, had not the God of heaven commanded me to do what I did do. And when the hour came that I was commanded to do that, it was all clear to me. I went before the Lord, and I wrote what the Lord told me to write." So that's his perspective. That's what he was thinking and what was going on. He was fully willing to let everything go. The temples go, him go to prison, all the other men go to prison, because it's what they had been told to do. That's the commandment. He was going to follow them. So if you remember, we talked about the journey, and we're tested in this life and dealing with trials, things like that. If you remember from, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, 135 and 136, he was ready to go until he got this revelation, and then it all became clear. It's time to be done. We've got to move on this. So just really some context that goes along with Official Declaration 1 for you as well. Now, Official Declaration 2 was in 1978. This one was much further. Official Declaration 1 was back in 1890. So now we move up to 1978, is when Official Declaration 2 came out. This one was the one about granting the blacks priesthood. There's a huge amount of debate about this one. Some people hate it. Some people hated that the church would not give the blacks priesthood and then suddenly gave them priesthood. There's other people who hate the blacks even got priesthood. They're both wrong, as far as I'm concerned, because it's not about the priesthood or who gets what. It's about following God and what he says. And so this is the revelation that was given to President Spencer W. Kimball to officially say that it's okay for the blacks to hold the priesthood. This wasn't necessarily a bad thing per se. I mean, if you look back in the history of the church, down in Joseph's time, there were black men who were ordained to the priesthood. It wasn't held away from them at that time. What happened was the people back then, because of racism and the challenges, they kind of went away from giving the blacks the priesthood. It became a bit of a tradition, and it stayed away from them. But I think really this came around because of Martin Luther King Jr. and those, he changed the mindset of the people so the people would accept the truth more. And that is when it was time to do this. I think really this one came down to the people were not ready to hear this until 1978. And then the Lord says, okay, now the people are prepared in their mind frame, their mindset to understand this better. And that's when they brought it forward. If you have a contrarian idea to that, please feel free to leave it in the comments. We'd love to discuss this further. Let's keep the hate out of it though, and just offer opinions, not hate or accuse people of other things as well. But that's what official declaration number 2 is all about, is the revelation of allowing blacks to hold the priesthood. So some really fun stuff to learn this week. Take time to read these and understand them better, and go even in the Saints. Hopefully in volume 3 of the Saints, it'll come out soon. They skipped a whole year, and we'll learn more of getting closer to what was going on at this time in the history of the church as well. So thanks for watching.